God doesn't always build things with perfect people. He uses those who have been broken many times, and it proves that if they trust in him, that they can come back from what they got themselves into. And listen, this episode, From Broken to Built, I'm gonna prove that. I'm gonna prove that for you. Hey, listen, I am Cliff Watson, and this is the Mind Your Business podcast. Stay tuned. It's gonna get good. Hey, before we bring it home with the finale today, and get into our biblical text today, I want to walk you through where we've been. Episode 1, we talked about you're richer than you think, and treating your purpose in life like it can wait. Then episode 2, we talked about how your past is raw material, and it doesn't disqualify you, it qualifies you. And you can start building now in the middle of a hard season. That is the survivor to builder shift, episode 3. We call that episode Hurt People, but Healed People Build Things. And we talked about how you have to deal with the hurt in your life. And then as you heal, you can actually build. And then episode 4, we talked about stop forcing what God has not opened up for you yet. Position yourself. And that beats forcing every time. And so we've have 5 episodes, this being the 5th one. And today we are going to bring it home. We started this series again with Esau, a man who had everything handed to him. Or he had the birthright. He had and he traded it for a bowl of soup. He watched his contempt, him despising his birthright, become a culture. And they said that's why he is called Edom. If you go back, you'll know what I'm talking about. His wound became his identity. His pattern became a generational legacy, as we just said, called Edom. And we asked the question, what does it take not to be Esau? The answer turns out is Jacob. Not because Jacob was better than Esau. He wasn't. He was a schemer, a manipulator, a man who spent decades trying to grab what God had already promised him, trying to scheme to get it. He lied to his father, cheated his brother, ran from his family, and then he then he got played by his uncle for 20 years. And yet, Jacob is one whose name God changed to Israel, and the name that we speak of all the time, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Not because he was righteous, but because he was willing to be broken and rebuilt. That is the message of this entire series. God is not looking for perfect people to build his kingdom right here on earth or to carry out their purpose. He is looking for people who will stop running long enough to let him do the work in your life. People who will hold on through the wrestle. People who will let him rename him by changing their character. This is this is from Broken to Built Journey, and it is available to every person listening today, going from broken to built. Hey, listen, let me give you the first point of this episode. Broken is not the end, it's the beginning. Broken is not the end, it's the beginning. I know, it seems like it, but let me read you this scripture. Chapter 32, verse 22 through 24. It says, the night Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, his 11 sons, and crossed the ford at Jabbok. After he had sent them across the stream, he sent all of his possession. So Jacob was left alone. Look, Genesis 32, Jacob is at the lowest moment of his life. Even though he went through all of that stuff, he is at the lowest moment of his life. He has sent his wives, his children, his servants across the river, and now he's alone, facing the consequences of everything he ran from 20 years ago. He has no more schemes left, no backup plan. He is stripped of everything he used to protect himself, and that is exactly where God shows up. Aha. The aloneness was not a punishment. It was preparation. God stripped Jacob of everything he had been using to avoid the encounter, because the encounter was the only thing that could produce the transformation. The encounter with God was the only thing that could produce transformation. If you are in this season of aloneness right now, if everything has been stripped back and you are sitting in the wreckage of something that didn't work out, you are not being abandoned. God didn't leave you. You are being positioned. God is positioning and preparing you for the most important encounter of your life, probably. Broken is not the end. It is the beginning of the only process that produces something that lasts. Listen, here's a key principle. Here's a key principle I want you to get. Don't forget this. God doesn't show up in spite of your broken place. He shows up because of it. So he doesn't show up because of the broken place. I mean, in spite of the broken place, he shows up because of it. He shows up because you're broken. The stripping is the setup. Him pulling everything from you is actually the setup, or allowing it to be pulled from you is the setup. Listen, the wrestling is part of the building. The wrestling is part of the building. Watch this. Genesis 32, 25 and 26. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip. But Jacob replied, I will not let you go unless you bless me. Whoa. God touches Jacob's hip and puts it out of socket. Jacob is now physically broken, limping, in pain, and still he holds on because he realized who he was wrestling with. Why does an all-powerful God need to wrestle with the man all night? Because the wrestle was not about strength. It was about surrender. It was getting Jacob to surrender himself. Jacob had spent his entire life grabbing for things, and the wrestle was God's way of taking all of that grabbing energy and redirecting it. Jacob stopped grabbing for things and started holding on to God. He stopped trying to grab everything in the world and started holding on to God. And that shift from grabbing to holding is what changed everything. Think about it. The broken hip, the thing that slows you down, that takes away your ability to run. Takes away your ability to run. It's not a casualty of the encounter. That is the gift of it. Might seem like a casualty, but that's a gift because it slows you down. Because sometimes God has to break your ability to run before you will stay long enough to be built. Oh. Here's a key principle I want you to understand. Sometimes God breaks what you've been running on so you will stop long enough to be rebuilt into something that can actually hold on. Think about that. Hold on through the wrestle. Hold on through the wrestle. To everybody who's in the middle of a wrestle right now, a season that is harder than you expected, a process that is taking longer than you planned, don't let go. Don't let go. Do not let go. Jacob's entire transformation hinged on a decision he made in his broken moment when he said, when he held on. Not elegantly, not without pain, but he held on. He had just got his hip dislocated. Your breakthrough is not coming when the wrestle ends. It's gonna come because you refuse to let go in the middle of the wrestle. Think about it. Here's number 3 I want you to get. Point number 3. Broken people get new names. Broken people get new names. Just like Esau got renamed, but it was in the opposite direction. It was to the negative. Look at what broken people get. Broken people get new names. What is your name? He asked. He said, Jacob, he answered. Then the man said, and this man that we're talking about, this God in the flesh, the man said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel. See, first of all, he asked him his name. God knew his name, but he wanted Jacob to be honest about who he was. Jacob the schemer. And then, now that he has come to realization with himself, God has now changed his name to Israel. God asked him, what's his name? And again, he's omniscient. He doesn't need to ask. He asks again because he wants Jacob to say it. He wants Jacob to own it, to stand in his brokenness, his limping, his exhausted state, and say out loud, I am Jacob the schemer. That's what he wanted to do. The man who deceived his father, stole from his brothers, and stole from his brother. He says, I am Jacob, I'm not God. The acknowledgement is part of the transformation. You cannot be renamed until you have honestly named who and what you are, until you come to grips with who you really are. And God says, not anymore. Your name will no longer be Jacob. You are Israel, the one who wrestled with God and prevails, the one who holds on. What pain named you? What pain named you? Was it schemer, failure, a felon, a dropout, an addict, too much, not enough? We talked about this stuff. That is not your permanent name. That's what your mistakes may have called. And I like to say that's what the haters want you to be. But God has a rename. He has a new name for you. And the rename comes after the honest acknowledgement, after the wrestle, after the broken hip, after you stop running long enough to say, this is who I've been. Man, running long enough to look in the mirror and say, man, I ain't quite been right. And then let him say, it's not you anymore. You now got a new character. Here's a key principle I want you to understand. You cannot be renamed until you honestly name what you are. This transformation starts with acknowledging who you are. In other words, the change in your life don't start until you look that person in the mirror, and that's when you begin to see and be honest about that person in the mirror. And that's when you begin to see transformation. Your limp becomes your testimony. Your limp becomes your testimony. Watch this. Verse 31 of chapter 32, 31. Here it is. The sun rose above him as he passed through Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. Jacob walked away limping. He had to limp. He walked into the most important day of his life, facing Esau. Reconciling his past. That's where he's going now. That's why he did all this, so he got to face Esau. And remember, Esau was going to kill him. Esau was going to kill him, and now he's going to face him. Step into his future as Israel. He's no longer Jacob, he's Israel, with a visual reminder of an encounter that changed him. Your lip is not something to be ashamed of. What you went through, that's your limp. That's not something to be ashamed of. Your limp is evidence that you were in the encounter. The stuff that you went through and God brought you out because you held on to him, you didn't let go. That's the encounter. That's the encounter. And the thing you went through that left a mark on you, the record, the addiction, the failure, the loss of years, that is not a liability. That's your testimony, and your testimony is one of the most powerful tools in your hand for reaching people. God puts you here to reach others. He put you here to reach others, and that limp is what you gonna limp through to help other people. All right, and then watch this. Number 4, the reconciliation is part of the building. So the limp part of the testimony, but then when you reconcile, it's part of the building. But Esau ran to meet Jacob and embraced him. See, Jacob was scared initially. He threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Look at one thing you see here. Although Jacob was limping, Esau was the one that ran to him. He didn't have to run. He couldn't run. But Esau ran to him and put his arms around him. Isn't that funny how God made that work out? But Jacob's limping towards Esau, 20 years of guilt, shame, separation between them, and Esau runs to beat him. That is a miracle. Throws his arms around him, miracle. Kisses him, miracle. And they both wept, miracle. That's the healing part of a 20-year wound, as we talked about in episode 3, in one embrace. He had been healed right here. This is what reconciliation looks like. When God has been working on both sides of the broken relationship. You understand what I'm saying? And notice what made that moment possible. Jacob had to show up. Probably didn't want to. Probably he was scared to death. He had to walk towards the thing he had been running from for 2 decades. And listen, he couldn't run from it no more because he was limping. He was limping. He was vulnerable, and he didn't have a scheme. Building something that lasts requires reconciliation with the people who hurt you on the way, with the version of yourself you left behind. It causes you to be with the God you've been running from. You cannot build legacy on unreconciled relationships. The building requires the walking towards the thing and not running from. God put him in a position where he couldn't run from Esau. He couldn't run from what he had been running for. He had to limp to it. He had to walk to it. And when he walked, he was walking with the limp. He couldn't run. He had no way to run. Key principle here: you cannot build a lasting legacy on unreconciled relationships. The building requires the walking towards and not the running from. It requires you to walk towards the thing, not running from it, okay? Point number 5. Here's point number 5. God builds his best work out of broken people. He builds his best work out of broken people. And you see it through all the Bible, how he took people who messed up and done some amazing stuff with them. Genesis 50:20, man, this is one of the coolest scriptures when it comes to reconciliation, because Joseph hit him hard with this one. His brothers sold him into slavery. They hadn't seen him in years. And then he goes through slavery, he goes to prison, and then finally from prison, he's recognized, and he actually goes and be second in command of Egypt. Then there's a famine in the land, and his brothers and father and all of them are hungry, and they gotta face Joseph, and they don't even know it. It is so cool. But listen, Genesis 50, verse 20, just look at what it says, just what I just talked about. You intended to harm me when they sold him into slavery, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done. I want to close this series with Genesis 50, verse 20. This is Joseph. This is actually Jacob's son, to be honest, speaking to the brothers who sold him into slavery, as I talked about. And what Joseph says is the theological summary of the entire patriarchal narrative. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. Think about what that means in context of this whole series. Esau's contempt for his birthright, or him despising his birthright. Jacob's schemes. Laban's deception. The 20 years of separation. Joseph being sold into slavery by his own brothers. Every broken moment, every painful detour, every consequence of somebody's bad decision, God was in all of it. He was there the entire time, not causing the harm, but redeeming it, taking what was intended to destroy and building something out of it that nobody could have engineered on their own. The things that happened with Jacob, with the reconciliation of Esau, and now we seeing what's happened with Joseph, nobody could have engineered that on their own. It had to take a divine intervention for that. Your broken places are not liabilities in God's hands. They are raw material. It's raw material. It's like a blank canvas. They are the chapters that gives your story weight. Let people see what God really does, your testimony. They are the credentials that opens doors to people who need what only you can give them. There are certain things in this world, watch this, that people need. And God created you to give it to them. Okay, he created you to give it to them because of all the stuff you went through. Key principle, God doesn't just redeem your broken places. He builds his best work through them. Your mess is not a detour from your destiny. It is the material your destiny is made of. Now, of course, I'm gonna put a framework around it for you. From broken to built framework, here's 4 stages. Here's the 4 stages. This is the Jacob pattern, 4 stages. Every broken person must move through to be built into something that lasts. Number 1, the stripping. God removes everything you've been using to avoid the encounter, and particularly the encounter with him. The stripping feels like a loss, but it's actually preparation. You cannot be rebuilt while you are still propped up by the things you've been leaning on instead of God. God can't rebuild you when you got all this stuff that you leaning on. You got a job you leaning on. You got money you leaning on. You got all this stuff that you've got by forcing it, but God can't rebuild you while you leaning and depending on that stuff. All that stuff instead of God. Now he'll give you that stuff while you trust him. In the midst of you trusting him and knowing that all that stuff came from him. Stage 2, the wrestle. Here's the wrestle. Genesis 32, 25 through 26. The honest, desperate, all-night encounter where you stop grabbing for things and start holding on to God. That's what he wants you to do. He wants you to hold on to him. This is where the broken hip happens, where God dismantles the thing you've been running on. That very thing that's getting you through. That's when he dismantles it. Hold on. Don't let go. The wrestle is not the end of the building. It is the foundation of the building. Stage 3, we call it the renaming. The renaming. After the honest acknowledgement comes, and the new identity, you say what you've been. God says, what you are now, the name the pain give you is replaced with the name God ordained for you, okay? After honest acknowledgement, I want you to understand, the new identity comes. And this is when you say what you've been honest with yourself. God says what you are now. The name the pain gave you is replaced with the name God ordained for you or the name God gave you. And from this point forward, you organize your life around the new name. Not the old one. Not the old one no more. Stage 4 is the reconciliation. Genesis 33:4. It's you walk towards what you've been running from. Go face it. The relationship, the conversation. You've been avoiding God. The reconciliation is where the building comes from. It becomes visible to others. They see it. They're like, man, he showed change. She showed change. It's where your story becomes someone else's breakthrough. When you telling people your story, and now becomes someone's breakthrough. Let me bring this home for you. We started with Esau, the man who had everything and despised it. He had the birthright. Who let contempt replace contentment. So he despised it, and he was okay with that, which is crazy. Who let the survival mode replace his vision? Who let the wounds become his identity? Who never stopped long enough to be honest and be healed, to be built into what he was always supposed to be. And God used Moses to write the verdict. So he despised his birthright. That was the verdict. And we end with Jacob, a man who was just broken as Esau, but in different ways, who schemed when he should have trusted, who forced when he should have positioned, who ran when he should have just stayed still. And yet, in his most broken moment, stripped of everything, alone and limping, he held on to God. He said, I will not let you go until you bless me. And God said, you're no longer Jacob, you are Israel. He changed his name. That is the difference between Esau and Jacob. No talent, no background, not how clean his story was. The difference was the one decision in the dark when everything else had failed. Hold on or let go, and Jacob held on. Hold on, y'all. Hey, listen, you just listening to me. Hold on, don't let go. Your worst chapter is not your last. That's not your last chapter. The limp, what has broken you, It's not the end of the story. It's the beginning. The broken place is not the final destination. God builds his best work out of broken people, and he is not finished with you yet. Oh my God, he got something for you. What God can build through me, if I stop running and let him work. Ask yourself that question. What can God build with me if I stop running and I let him work? Oh my goodness, you'd be surprised. I am a living witness. So here's the final steps. Work through the from broken to built framework. Be honest about which stage you're at right now. This is just between you and Jesus, you and God. And nobody is looking. Just be honest. Let this be between you and Jesus. Stage one, the stripping. The stage one, is the stripping. What God has been removing from your life that you've been resisting. What has God been removing from your life that you've been resisting? Stop resisting it. That's the stripping. The stripping is the setup. He's setting you up for a comeback. Stage two is the wrestle. What are you still running from that God is asking you to engage on and is running from, and God is asking you to engage honestly? Stop running and start wrestling with God. In other words, stop running and start holding on to God. All right? Start holding on to God. Stage three is the renaming. What name has pain given you that you need to stop answering to? What name has pain given you that you need to stop answering to? Declare the name that God has given you. Declare the purposes and things that God has placed in your life. And then stage four, which is major, the reconciliation. What relationship or conversation have you been avoiding that the building requires? In order for you to be free, what conversation or relationship have you been avoiding in order so that you can get free and build? Walk towards it this week. Hey, if you love this, share this series with someone who needs it. And again, go to IamCliffWatson.com and download the Esau Audit Worksheet. Your worst chapter is not your last chapter. From broken to built, that is God's specialty. Hey, listen, I need you to do 4 things for me. I need you to do 4 things before I let you go. First, subscribe to Mind Your Business podcast on YouTube. That's our YouTube channel where you can get the full episodes every week and get them every week. Second, follow Mind Your Business on Facebook, and I am Cliff Watson on Instagram for clips, updates, and the behind-the-scene content. Third, I want you to like this episode and comment, leave a review wherever you're listening to it at. It takes 30 seconds, and it helps people to find this content. It helps them to find us as well. And fourth, go to I Am Cliff Watson, and download the From Broken to Built Framework worksheet. It's free, and it will help you do the work that we've talked about today. Listen, Mind Your Business University is coming, and it's for those who've been overlooked, knocked down, who've made some mistakes, those that are looking for a second chance to build first-class lives. And we're going to be dealing with the 3 pillars: business development, personal mastery, spiritual maturity, just like we do on this podcast, but with the MYB University, we're going to go deeper. So listen, be looking out for it. We got a lot of information coming for you in just a few weeks. In order for you to get signed up with us, and listen, thank you for hanging out with us. This is the Mind Your Business podcast, and I am Cliff Watson. Thanks for tuning in. God bless you, and see you soon.